Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. And thank you especially to the people who make this possible for you every single day with their support at patreon.com/SW7x7. Alright, we're here with our deep dive episode related to Night, which is episode 5 of the Acolyte, and we have encountered officially a Sithy situation. It's one thing to see somebody with a red-bladed lightsaber in teasers and trailers and whatnot, but for Darth Qimir, for lack of a better, to identify himself as a Sith, or to say that the Jedi would probably refer to him as a Sith, well, yeah, now it's official, and now it's a big deal and a big problem for a lot of reasons. And it's kind of funny, you know, when the red-bladed lightsaber was first seen before the series ever came out, there was a certain segment of the population that got very disgruntled and said, well, if there's a red-bladed lightsaber in here, then everybody in the show has to die. Because of the whole, you know, the Sith haven't been seen in a millennia or whatever it is. But the tenor of those comments definitely came across like there was not any respect for the showrunners and creators, and that they might not even conceive of doing something like that. And they didn't necessarily need to anyway. We talked about this in our Jedi cover-ups episode. There's definitely every reason to think that multiple people could know about a red-bladed lightsaber-wielding person and just decide to bury that information, right? But it turned out that the creators of the Acolyte did the unthinkable and killed 7 of the 10 people who are aware of this red-bladed lightsaber-wielding person. And even Darth Qimir himself is aware of the conundrum. The fact that anybody has seen his face means that they have to die. And it's probably even a little further than that. If anybody has seen that red-bladed lightsaber, they also have to die. So we're down to Osha, May, and Sol. Those are the only 3 people who know about this particular situation. Maybe? Well, I mean, I think it's a little more complicated than that, because there are probably a couple other people who know as well, but are not a threat in the same way. One of the possible scenarios, though I think it might be the comparatively unlikely one, is when Qimir says that he's been looking for an Acolyte, but it turns out that May is not going to be it. It does imply the possibility that maybe there have been other Acolyte people who have, he's tried to recruit, he's tried to bring under his wing, so to speak, maybe not. And if he has, then they may not have panned out and they may be dead, or they may be out doing other jobs for him for all we know. So that's one particular thing. But I think the more important one to consider is who Qimir is reporting to. It really does suggest, everything that happens in this episode, that he has to have a master himself. I mean, Saul's been around the block and he doesn't recognize Qimir as being any Jedi that he ever knew. But Qimir clearly has Force-specific training, the kind that only a Jedi or a Sith would have gotten. But Qimir would have had to get that training from someone else. I mean, people don't just pick up this kind of training, at least not that we've ever seen in Star Wars, right? I mean, the nearest thing you could possibly suggest to that is Rey Skywalker. However, Rey didn't really, in that first battle with Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens, show a lot of Force-specific abilities, right? She was able to call the lightsaber to her, but that was really about it. Everything else was about brute force and strength, and maybe there was some, Force-fueled strength in there as well, but considering the fact that she has been working with a long staff for a good part of her life, knowing how to wield a weapon like a lightsaber makes sense for her under the circumstances. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think necessarily the cases are apples to apples comparisons, but ultimately what I want to say is I definitely think Darth Qimir had to be trained by someone to be as strong in the Force as he is, to be as skilled with a lightsaber as he is, to be able to take on 8 Jedi and to best 7 of them. So just when it seemed like the mysteries of the show had all but been revealed, maybe there's a deeper level that we can pursue this with. However, there is also potentially the case that whoever Qimir studied under, that Qimir is not associated with them anymore, and and is his own rogue agent. He is talking about freedom after a certain fashion, and being an apprentice to a master certainly would imply a comparative lack of freedom. It's funny, once again, as I'm watching this, I'm thinking again of Delilah Dawson's Rise of the Red Blade, where Iskat, the Inquisitor who we meet and who's the subject of the novel, ultimately chafes under not only the time with the Jedi Order, but also her time with the Inquisitorius. And she's ultimately just looking for freedom and thinks that she's going to get it under the Inquisitorius, and eventually does not. And that leads to, you know, the finale of the novel and the situations that happen there, and I won't spoil it for you. Suffice it to say that Iskat's desire to get out from under the thumb of the Inquisitorius reminded me of what we're seeing with Qimir in this situation, and the possibility that Qimir wanted to be out from under the thumb of a master who may have trained under that master previously, but is now a free agent, but still kind of wants somebody else to push her around. But it does still also beg the question of why is he particularly invested in seeing these particular 4 Jedi die, Indara and Torben and Kelnaka and Sol? Like, why does he care about these particular people? And why does he care about what happened on Brendok all those years ago? What is his own investment in the situation? He is risking discovery, after all, as Sol notes, despite the fact that he was wearing a mask. But yeah, he was not operating in the shadows. He was actually kind of doing stuff that was bound to get the Jedi's attention sooner rather than later. So he definitely has to have some investment in this. He can't have been part of that coven, it doesn't seem, because it was just women who were in that particular coven, and there's not an implication that any men were involved in it. And the creation of May and Osha is one that appears to be immaculate based on the information we've been given in the series so far. So yeah, where Qimir fits into all this is still an open question. The last thing I'll flag for this is about the rule of 2, which is of course the thing where when it comes to the Sith, there's only supposed to be a master and an apprentice, but they have these ways that they bend the rules where, you know, below the apprentice you can have, for example, an acolyte, and so that gives the opportunity for more than one dark side force user aligned with the Sith to be operating. But the fact that Qimir is identifying himself as a Sith, that's particularly important, especially going back to the Delilah Dawson novel. Iskat, as an Inquisitor, is not able to refer to herself as a Sith. That is only reserved for Darth Vader and then for Emperor Palpatine. Not even the Grand Inquisitor is considered a Sith, right? So yeah, he may well have been high up on the food chain, and if he's no longer associated with a master, then he's just hanging on to that name, or at least the idea of a Sith as a philosophy more than anything else. So that's what I've got for you on our deep dive episode related tonight, the ideas about Darth Qimir, if you will, and his Sith origins, and what his connections might be to the broader story and to other characters, some as yet to be revealed potentially. That is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. If you enjoy the show, please consider helping me get it out to more people who might enjoy this daily dose of Star Wars joy. You can do that really simply with a rating or review if you haven't done that already, or by liking, subscribing, commenting, following in the app of your choice. Even just telling people is really helpful, and I would greatly appreciate that. And you can also help support me as an independent creator getting this out to the world on a daily basis, and you can learn more about that at patreon.com/SW7X7. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.